interested in a series of videos about various anatomy, comparative, in order to do realistic animals and creature design. This one here is bird anatomy, but it's focusing particularly on the neck anatomy of birds because I haven't seen anyone focusing on that. So here I'm drawing some green herons. I'm showing the vast difference between the coiled up version of the neck and the extended long version of the neck. So green herons have, if not the most exaggerated, certainly one of the best examples of a bird neck that can coil up while the feathers spread around and make the shape a beautiful aqua shell. It makes the neck hide away in order to lower the profile of the bird. It makes it harder for predators to see it, and when that same bird is to extend its neck, you realize how much longer the real neck is than the apparent neck. So this shows that sometimes the skeletal and even the muscular anatomy of a creature doesn't always match with its physical appearance. The physical appearance of these birds varies greatly from what it looks like if you were just to show a version without feathers. So feathers can change the appearance greatly. In mammals, fur can change the appearance greatly, but I believe the greatest discrepancy is actually in birds with feathers. This can also apply to paleo art because some small dinosaurs that are extremely bird-like, which are technically birds based on the current scientific understanding, may also have had these layers of feathers or large feather structures that change the way they look. A lot of paleo art reconstructs things in a very shrink-wrapped way, but it doesn't mean that that was necessarily how the animal is represented in life. So here I'm just coloring the green herons in, and I think green herons are definitely a misnomer because there's very little green on them. They're more like reddish brown, dark brown, and white with yellow areas, and very faint and subtle metallic green highlights present on the feather crest on the head and the wing. The other thing you can notice here is that they have the ability to raise and lower feathers, and in the case of the green heron, they have a crest on the head that can be raised or lowered, which also changes the physical appearance. So green heron is probably the best example of this that I could find in the entire bird kingdom. It's important to actually look at the way a creature appears as well as the structural anatomy underneath. So this is a budgie or a budgerigar, which is a small flocking parrot that's native to Australia, although the domestic versions have various colorations. The ones in the wild appear more yellow-green. So here I am sketching it out. This is me working out the skeletal anatomy after looking up reference, of course, and adjusting things until I got everything. I worked in layers. Now, the neck lies because the real neck is an S-curve, but the shape of the neck in appearance is more of a short cylinder. The feathers layer to make an airfoil of overlapping feathers, same as what I was talking about with the heron, but in the case of the budgie, it has an even shorter appearing neck that appears even wider, and they don't tend to stretch out their neck very often. They tend to keep their neck coiled up, but that's a comfortable position for them. So I'm just painting the budgie in here so that it's fully rendered. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that the skeletal and musculature appearance of birds is extremely different than the surface anatomy, which is the main point I'm trying to make here. This is especially true about the necks of birds. I'm working out a short-eared owl here. This was originally going to be a fully colored rendering, and then partway through I realized, I don't like it, and for this example I don't need it. So I just instead changed it into a rim-lit silhouette, because the most important part about this lesson isn't the way the owl looks like fleshed out, it's more about the actual underlying structural anatomy. So this is a simplified version of the skeleton. So it's pointing out the underlying anatomy beneath the feathers. And it's important to know this so that when you're doing creature design or painting animals, you understand what the underlying anatomy is, so you can see what parts can move, what parts can't. And if you can understand how the feathers layer on a creature like this, you can also understand how to move it and why things work the way they work. Now this is a peregrine falcon, just a quick sketchy kind of painting, but it's showing once again that small thin skeleton underneath and how wide the width of the neck is once you add the feathers. It's a huge discrepancy, and they usually keep their neck in a permanent S-curve. This is showing the layering of the feathers, which are layered like shingles, and that the feathers can raise and lower based on mood and the appearance of that bird. Now this is showing the heron neck anatomy. Now herons have a special musculature anatomy in their neck that allows them to throw their beak like a spear. So like a spear thrower. They have a special kink in their neck and specialized muscles that allow them to do this. So only members of the heron family, so herons and egrets, have this special neck kink musculature and tendons, which is very interesting. So it's interesting to look at the underlying structure of some of these creatures and see what's there. So this here is a comparative study of various bird necks, and it's showing the surface anatomy structures of these birds. With all the previous skeletal structure studies, you could probably figure out which ones are covered by large feathers and appear much larger, and which ones are closer to the neck anatomy. Now obviously the ostrich is the closest to the real neck anatomy because it's just a skin covering over a very tightly wrapped muscle neck, whereas the ruff is the most exaggerated of all these because it has the smallest neck under there, and it's completely covered in huge, enormous layered display feathers, and it's literally named for these structures. Now only the male has them, and only in the breeding season. In the non-breeding season, the male actually looks pretty much like a different species of bird because he loses all those long feathers and gets much shorter neck feathers. The flamingo also has a very close to the skeletal and musculature anatomy of the neck. Now gray-legged goose has a bit thicker feathers. The glossy starling has the S-curve and the layered feathers. The rail is more close to the actual neck anatomy, and the rock ptarmigan has a bit of thicker feathers, I believe. I think the neck anatomy in there is a bit thinner. So it's interesting to see which ones are close to the skeletal and musculature anatomy and which ones are affected by the feathers to various extents. Now you can see that this is a griffin, so this is a mythical creature, but it's mostly based on bird anatomy. There's a bit of mammal anatomy in there, but it's mostly bird anatomy. So the same rules apply to the underlying structure of having a smaller S-curve neck and a smaller musculature and much larger feathers. But because it is based on mammal anatomy, I did make the neck structure underneath a lot thicker than what a normal bird would have, which is probably closer to what a lot of feathered dinosaurs would have. This now is a Microraptor Gwaii, which is a dinobird, a four-winged flying raptor. And as you can see, I added extra width for the feathers, which is very plausible. Well, I hope that this was particularly educational for everybody watching this video, and that this information will help you learn to paint and draw your own avian-based real and mythological creatures with more accuracy and scientific basis behind the decisions. More videos coming soon, and let me know in the comments below if you liked the video. Thank you!